Hello there, I'm Freddie Fox, and I'm going to be reading to you today an extract from The Speckled Band, which is a Sherlock Holmes adventure by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is in support of the National Brain Appeals Emergency Fund for NHS staff at the National Hospital. There was little difficulty in entering the grounds, for unrepaired breaches gaped in the old park wall. Making our way among the trees, we reached the lawn, crossed it, and were about to enter through the window, when out of a clump of laurel bushes there darted what seemed to be a hideous and distorted child, who threw itself on the grass with writhing limbs and then ran swiftly across the lawn and into the darkness. "My God," I whispered, "did you see it?" Holmes was, for that moment, as startled as I. His hand closed like a vice upon my wrist in his agitation. Then he broke into a low laugh, and he put his lips to my ear. "It is a nice household," he murmured. "That is the baboon." I had forgotten the strange pets which the doctor affected. There was a cheetah too. Perhaps we might find it upon our shoulders at any moment. I confess that I felt easier in my mind when, after following Holmes' example and slipping off my shoes, I found myself inside the bedroom. My companion noiselessly closed the shutters. "The least sound would be fatal to our plans," he whispered. I nodded to show that I had heard. "We must sit without a light. He would see it through the ventilator." I nodded again. "Do not go to sleep. Your very life may depend upon it." I took my revolver and laid it on the corner of the table. Holmes had brought up a long, thin cane, and this he placed upon the bed beside him. By it he laid the box of matches and the stump of a candle. Then he turned down the lamp, and we were left in darkness. Far away, we could hear the deep tones of the parish clock, which boomed out every quarter of an hour. How long they seemed, those quarters. 12 o'clock, and 1, and 2, and 3. And still we sat waiting silently for whatever might befall. Suddenly, there was the momentary gleam of a light up in the direction of the ventilator, which vanished immediately, but was succeeded by a strong smell of burning oil and heated metal. Someone in the room next door had lit a dark lantern. I heard a gentle sound of movement, and then all was silent once more, though the smell grew stronger. For half an hour I sat with straining ears. Then, suddenly, another sound became audible, a very gentle, soothing sound, like that of a small jet of steam escaping continually from a kettle. The instant we heard it, Holmes sprang from his bed, struck a match, and lashed furiously with his cane at the bell pull. "You see it, Watson," he yelled. "You see it?" But I saw nothing. At the moment when Holmes struck the light, I heard a low, clear whistle, but the sudden glare flashing into my wary eyes made it impossible for me to tell what it was at which my friend lashed so savagely. I could, however, see that his face was deadly pale and filled with horror and loathing. He had ceased to strike and was gazing up at the ventilator when suddenly there broke from the silence of the night the most horrible cry to which I have ever listened. It swelled up louder and louder, a hoarse yell of pain and fear and anger, all mingled in that one dreadful shriek. They say that away down in the village, and even in the distant parsonage, that cry raised the sleepers from their beds. It struck cold into our hearts, and I stood gazing at Holmes and he at me until the last echoes of it had died away into the silence from which it rose. "What can it mean?" I gasped. "It means that it is all over," Holmes answered. "And perhaps, after all, it is for the best. Take your pistol, and we shall enter Dr. Roylott's room." It was a singular sight which met our eyes. On the table stood a dark lantern with the shutter half open, throwing a brilliant beam of light upon an iron safe, the door of which was ajar. Beside this table, on the wooden chair, sat Dr. Grimsby Roylott, clad in a long grey dressing gown, his bare ankles protruding beneath, and his feet thrust into red, heelless Turkish slippers. Across his lap there lay the short stock with the long lash which we had noticed during the day. His chin was cocked upwards, and his eyes were fixed in a dreadful, rigid stare at the corner of the ceiling. Round his brow he had a peculiar yellow band with brownish speckles, which seemed to be bound tightly round his head. As we entered, he made neither sound nor motion. "The band, the speckled band," whispered Holmes. I took a step forward. In an instant, his strange headgear began to move, and there reared itself from among his hair the squat, diamond-shaped head and puffed neck of a loathed serpent. "It was a swamp adder," cried Holmes, "the deadliest snake in India. He has died within 10 seconds of being bitten. Violence does, in truth, recoil upon the violent, and the schemer falls into the pit which he digs for another. Let us thrust this creature back into its den, and we can then remove Miss Stoner to some place of shelter and let the county police know what has happened." Thank you very much for listening, and please do donate to the emergency fund. I'm going to leave you with a little meditation from Marcus Aurelius, which I think is particularly apt at this moment in time. Objective judgment now, at this very moment. Unselfish action now, at this very moment. Willing acceptance now, at this very moment, of all external events. That is all you need.